B2B, B2C, simple sale, complex sale, no matter what you're selling, no matter what you're marketing, it all begins with the customer. Hi, I'm Daniel Burstein, Director of Editorial Content at MarketingSherpa. We are here at the DMA's annual event, And Then, and joining me now is Ernan Roman, the President of ERDM. We have Bill Kinneman, the Senior Director of Marketing and Analytics at Gilt, and Kris Gates, the VP of Marketing Strategy at MassMutual. Now, it's really interesting to have Gilt and MassMutual together because you have very different customers, but you still need to learn about them. So why don't we start with MassMutual? Tell me about who your customer is and what challenges you are facing.
Sure, so at MassMutual we provide workplace retirement plans for businesses who want to supply retirement savings vehicles for their employees. So I guess our customer is the average American worker, if you will, of our product. Our challenges when we underwent our voice of the customer research was, how does the customer define deeper relationships with us? What can we do to help them overcome their challenges? So what we knew going into this was the average American wasn't saving enough for retirement. And we all had our ideas on why that was. Advisors had their ideas, employers had their ideas, providers had their ideas. But no one ever actually stopped to listen to the customer to say, what is getting in the way of you doing what we both know you're supposed to do, but you're not doing? And it was a great experience, a great journey. It actually sent us on a completely different direction than we would have come up with in our own boardroom. So it was really interesting.
Okay, now saving for retirement, that is the ultimate long-term sale, right? The ultimate long-term goal. And imagine Gilt is facing very different challenges with customers.
Yeah, quite the opposite. We're the exact opposite. We're an impulse buy situation. We're a flash sale site, so we're highly discounted luxury goods for those people who love luxury goods but can't necessarily afford them. So you have a limited time to get a high discount on an item that you didn't even know you wanted until just about now when the sale started. So our challenge when we entered the voice of customer research was, how do we maintain and even expand engagement in an environment where the flash sale market is getting more and more crowded, but even more to the point, our competition is going way beyond flash sites. Our customers are shopping at many, many different places, department store sites, fashion label sites themselves, and of course many other flash retailers. So, you know, how do you engage these people? What is their process and so forth? And how do we keep that impulse? It was our challenge.
Okay, now as marketers, we all have an intuition, a certain guess of what our customers want, but what do we learn in the research? Was there anything surprising there?
Some very interesting things came out of the roughly 700 hours of interviews that we conducted on behalf of both MassMutual and Gilt. And in thinking about the MassMutual situation, had an interesting complexity of factors. One being, yes, I should save for retirement. It's a prudent thing to do. On the other hand, it's a low engagement category. It's not a thrilling category like purchasing a Prada or a Gucci or whatever. So therefore, lots of contradictory feelings coming up on the part of the MassMutual customer of, I ought to, but I'm really not going to. I'm going to find excuses to defer, delay, or find the lowest path. And so therefore, the motivation required to engage a customer was particularly challenging because just sending content wouldn't solve it because it is low engagement. So people had to be, what they were asking for was edutainment. Entertain me as you educate me or I won't engage. So it called for a great level of creativity in how content education guidance was provided. Very different in the Gilt situation where engagement was certainly there, but one of the key points that came out of the research was, and Bill touched on it, Gilt to engage me as a repeat customer, to get me to purchase more or come back again. Don't think of yourself as a flash site. Your competition is in fact Nordstrom or Bloomingdale's, who is now superb at multi-channel, where I can actually try things on. So reduce the barrier of trying things, exploring things, experimenting with new brands and designers, because that's what you need to compete and now rethink strategically where your business is going. You're much bigger than a flash sales site. That led to an amazing number of opportunities for rethinking the business, as you'll see in some of the actions that these folks have taken.
Okay, well, let's start with MassMutual. So how did you deal with those contradictory feelings? How did you provide that edutainment, so to speak?
So what we found in our industry was that people were treating everyone the same. So as you probably get from your HR area, you probably get this one-size-fits-all, what we call spray and pray communications. And it really wasn't working. So when we looked at what was happening when we were doing that, we were probably getting the same sort of conversion rate or response rate that any direct mail house would get, probably 1% to 2% on that segment. So we said, we could do better than this. So in our industry, we immediately go to simple demographics like age. A 50-year-old talking about retirement is different than a 25-year-old. So let's now slice this up by different age groups and genders, and they all deal with money situations differently. And let's just see if we made some just very small changes, could we change response rates? So all we did simply was change pictures and headlines, and we saw the response rates double. So we went from a 1% to 2% to a 4% response rate just doing that. We're like, wow, this obviously is an investment to do the extra work, but it's paying off dividends here. So what if we took this a step further? So in year 3, what we said was, let's not only change the imagery to be custom to the segment, but let's also change the body copy, the real hard part. So we did that. Actually, I have a few samples here, but so we ended up with 24 different segments. So they all have different imagery. Obviously, this one's for the millennium female, and then we have Gen Xer, and you get the point. But doing that extra work, we now 3x, the national average. So we're at 6% response rates, and we're not stopping there. So the other things that we've taken out of the VOC was that type of targeting is way better than not doing it. But if you start to think about attitudinal segmentation, like really the real next generation of what we're looking at doing, how do people think about your product? How do they feel when you talk about retirement? It's really less to do with how old you are, more to do with how, like, your personal bias, if you will. So we're looking at different attitudinal segments like gamblers. Gambler by definition would be someone who says, you know, when I retire, I'm just going to live on Social Security, so I won't save. Or not me. These are folks who might not have any children, not have a spouse, and say, well, I don't need to do this. I don't need to buy life insurance because I don't have anyone to support, so I'm not in that book. And then we have planners and takers, people who either own products that they don't remember buying or are so into everything, and they do all the planning and they run all the models on all the calculators. And then we start talking to our customers, like, how do you expect to engage with all these different groups and all these different thought processes with the same piece of information? It's just not going to happen. So really, that's kind of really one of our big take-ins from the VOC was how these groups self-define. So all the segments you saw on the slide weren't anything that we invented. It was really folks self-defining what bucket you should put them in and then executing on it.
Yeah, well, from going from one segment to 24 segments is some impressive execution.
Yeah.
So let's also talk about that edutainment
Sure.
we were talking about. So you also used videos?
Yeah, so as Ernan was alluding to earlier, if you think about retirement and investments, for most people that's really boring. And when you start talking about that in very institutional talk, people just start tuning out. So what we found was, there's a way to lighten this up and make it a little more humorous and engaging. You probably see that a lot in other industries. So what we did was we developed a series of small webisodes, if you will, launched them out on YouTube, and everyone tackled a financial topic. So one might be college savings, one might be things to consider when you're having a baby or getting married and stuff like that.
Let's take a quick look at one of those videos and see what that looks like.
Hello everyone and welcome to The Smart View, a new show featuring real talk about money and retirement from real people. I'm your host, Sophia Ramos, and here are my lovely co-hosts and real people, Lindsay Parker and David North. Welcome to our show.
You're lovely too.
Oh, thank you so much. So I was reading an article in the paper and it said that the millennial generation will be permanently scarred by the recession. This is what it said. I actually brought it with me. Periods of early unemployment during the 15-year transition from youth to young adulthood can damage earnings for decades.
Okay, and from that video, you got over 1,000% increase in video views?
Yeah, so really what the experiment was there was, so now we're targeting and segmenting people, but then we're dealing with people's preferences. So the experiment was come up with some good content, or what we thought was good content, offer people an opportunity to opt into the content. So we sent everyone an email and we said, hey, watch this video, we think it's interesting. People did, people didn't. The people that did, we said, hey, if you liked what you saw, opt in to receive notifications the next time we have a new one. And so people opted in and then people didn't. So then we measured the opt-in group with the rest of the audience, and what we found was the folks that opted in was a 94% higher open rate of the emails, as you mentioned, 1,000% higher video view rate. And I guess intuitively we assumed that was going to happen, not at that scale, but we knew it was going to be better.
That's pretty intuitive.
right. Well, we knew we'd get better results. We just were surprised by the results. But then something else happened, which if you work in data, I found it completely interesting was, and I guess you should know this intuitively too, but we didn't think about it, but when you have an opt-in list, we had 0 unsubscribes and 100% deliverability. So all the data that we got for the emails was accurate because you actually opted in and gave it to us. So that was the big win there. So that was a pilot. We're doing a lot more of that as we move forward.
All right, so let's take a look at Gilt now, we said consumer-oriented site. So if we learned in the research that you're competing more with the brick and mortars, I'm guessing the physical experience with the product would be very important. So how did that change?
Well, one of the things we heard again and again as the interviews progressed is people said, look, I'm buying Prada, I'm buying all these amazing brands, and you have the best brands. Our brand had nothing wrong with it. People still look to us for an incredible brand experience and an incredible luxury experience, a word that kept coming up again and again and again. And one of the things they pointed out is they said, well, you're sending me these incredible luxury items and this incredible luxury experience on the site, and then you send it to me in this poly bag or this brown box or whatever. And so they were having this experience that didn't cap off the experience they had started with. Their journey was suddenly changed into something that wasn't what they had expected. So what we did is we looked at our packaging and said we have to have a packaging that's on brand. We have to have packaging that looks different and looks nice and that caps off this experience. So we came up with an entire unboxing program where we went from these brown boxes to something that fits our brand, distinguishes us from other e-commerce sites they could be shopping with. And in addition to the boxes, the packing slips, the parts that take up the space in it and everything else are all on brand as well. It all fits into one unified experience, and we're in the process of rolling that out as we speak.
Okay, and I also imagine that competing with brick and mortar stores, returns tend to be easier in brick and mortar stores.
Absolutely.
How did you change your return policy?
Yeah, what we're doing right now is we're running a pilot test. We haven't rolled it out to everyone yet because we have to see how this works with everyone. But we're doing a portion of our customers are getting a much more expanded return policy where many categories that formerly were not returnable are returnable for them. And what we're already seeing is that there's lower cancellation rates because people have less fear of buyer's remorse. There is more willingness to put things in their cart. There is more willingness to try new things. Now, we still have to see how this comes net out in the end, but the fact is all the early signs are that people are very excited about having the ability to return more items.
And that also includes, I think, instantly crediting them?
Yeah, that's another thing that we're testing right now is people said, well, I understand, the limitations of Flash and that you don't have kind of the same model as Nordstrom or the other e-commerce sites that are full priced. But I do have a problem with having to wait until everything's, come out in the wash to get my credits. And so they're waiting and waiting and waiting for credits. And that led to a great deal of reluctance to purchase. So we're also doing a pilot program where we're doing express credits where you get them much faster than you used to. And that one we are literally just on the beginning of. So I don't have any results on that yet, but we do think that that's going to be, especially combined with the additional return policies, that the whole experience will reduce this hesitance to purchase something.
Okay. And this last example I thought was very interesting because in a recent MarketingSherpa survey we did of consumers, they told us one of the best ways they like to learn about products is simply browsing in a store. I think you're doing some things that make product discovery on the site even better than in a store.
Yeah. We're making it much easier for people to do their own personalization. We already have excellent personalization algorithms, but two of the problems that people complained about is that they didn't perceive it as being personalized because it was neither explicit nor did it allow them to participate. So we would be personalizing, we bring their sales into the best places on the site and on the emails, and they said, you guys don't personalize, do you? And we said, oh shoot, we are not being explicit with them, nor are we giving them a chance to participate the way that they want to do so. So we've added more dialogue boxes. We're much more aggressive about saying, does this work for you? Does the way we're personalizing things and recommending things work for you as a shopper? And we then have a feedback loop where we bring that back onto the site, into our email preferences, push notification preferences, everything.
That sounds a lot better than trust us. This is personalized.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you all. And thank you for watching. And whether you're a simple sale or a complex sale, you can learn much more from the interviews that end then at MarketingSherpa.com/DMA.